Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where first off, what you doing on Sunday? Want to watch Wonder Woman with me? That's right, I'm going to watch Wonder Woman live on my main Beyond the Trailer channel this Sunday, September 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'll be streaming it so you can watch simultaneously. There are full instructions down below in the video description on how to participate in this, because sometimes there's some confusion as to whether or not you have to have your own copy of the film, etc. It's all laid out down below. Now, speaking of specifics, if you go to the main Beyond the Trailer channel, the URLs are up for both live events. The viewing of the full movie at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, again this Sunday, but then also the Q&A that will follow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because the movie is 2.5 hours of DCEU awesomeness. And then we'll have about a half-hour break before the Q&A starts up. And if you go over there, you can not only bookmark the URLs where the live streams will take place, but I do believe it will allow you to set a reminder. YouTube will remind you. I don't know how it does that, but apparently it will. And then I'll remind you too over on Twitter. But then also, I think it will tell you in your own time zone specifically when it starts, in case you have any confusion about that. Time zones are mighty tricky, especially when you're doing global time zones. So that should clear that up for you as well. And don't forget to have your snack picked out. I'm totally doing vanilla ice cream, as one of you suggested. I think I'm going to freeze it super hard. So I have to have it out while I set up the streaming, and then it should melt to the perfect consistency for the movie. I can't wait to watch with you guys. I haven't watched the movie since I saw it twice in theaters, so I'm very, very excited. All right, I'll put links actually down below in the video description to the live streams as well. How did I not think of that? All right, so anyway, in honor of Wonder Woman live viewing on Sunday, two of the stories actually have to do with Gal Gadot, who, everybody's talking about Gal Gadot was already signed for the sequel for Wonder Woman, but so there's been a lot of discussion about what's going on with Patty Jenkins, and she finally has her deal. But, Gal Gadot, she's pretty available. Not a lot of, suitors to her dance card, which is weird considering she's the star of one of the most successful movies of the year and one of the most successful comic book movies of all time. But her team, her management team, is working very hard, and they've made some progress. And so that's what we're going to discuss today. And the first has to do with Saturday Night Live, which is coming off of one of their best years ever. The current political climate in the United States has been awfully good to the comedy circuit, particularly the late night shows and, of course, SNL. In fact, Alec Baldwin and Kate McKinnon just both walked away with Emmys at last weekend's ceremony for their work on the show. I feel Saturday Night Live relies a little too heavily on Alec Baldwin and Kate McKinnon in particular, so I hope that they can fix that this coming season, especially since they got rid of some of the cast members who you were wondering why they were there in the first place. I think they haven't had one of their strongest casts for quite some time, so I hope to see that change. But anyway, they've booked their first 3 hosts for the season, and they're all movie related. So first up is Ryan Gosling, who will start the season to promote Blade Runner 2049. He's hosted before. Speaking of Kate McKinnon, even though I do think the show relies on her a little bit too heavily, and also I'm very sad to say that every time I've seen her outside of Saturday Night Live, her work has been disappointing. So I don't know if she's ever, although Kristen Wiig never really took off either, which is unfortunate. It's weird. And I think Kate McKinnon is very much seen by Lorne Michaels as his new Kristen Wiig. But anyway, one of the best sketches ever was with Ryan Gosling and Kate McKinnon at the alien abduction sketch. It's hilarious, particularly because Ryan Gosling totally does the Jimmy Fallon and breaks and laughs throughout the sketch at Kate McKinnon's character. All right, so he'll kick off again to promote Blade Runner 2049. Maybe we'll get a Blade Runner type sketch. That'll be awesome. But then we have 2 other hosts for the season that I think are both there to do something very specific. And this is something that SNL can do for you if you are an emerging talent. So Gal Gadot will follow Ryan Gosling, and then Kumail Nanjiani, coming off of The Big Sick, will host after her. And he's a big deal because, of course, Aziz Ansari was the first South Asian talent to ever host the show last season, and now it seems wonderfully it's becoming a regular thing. So the thing is that with Saturday Night Live, both Gal Gadot and Kumail Nanjiani have very specific images in Hollywood. Are they one-trick ponies? Saturday Night Live is a great way to prove that they are not. Dwayne Johnson famously did this when he hosted and proved that he had a really good comedic timing and just was genuinely a pretty good actor. It was Saturday Night Live launched Dwayne Johnson's acting career, and ironically killed Ronda Rousey's when she hosted the show in an effort to duplicate Dwayne Johnson's success. There were a bunch of articles where her Ronda Rousey's representation was like, "Oh, you're going to be the female Dwayne Johnson, and of course we're going to have you host Saturday Night Live," because that was the path he took. But it was the end of the road for Ronda Rousey, because I don't know if you saw that episode, but she was pretty darn bad. So I'm nervous for Gal Gadot and Kumail Nanjiani. I don't know how much range they have, but this will be a chance for them to prove that they do have. I mean, I hope that their management team is very keyed into the sketches that they choose and the purpose of their hosting. You know, they're not just there to have fun and also to have the prestige of hosting. Oh, by the way, Chris Pine hosted to promote Wonder Woman last season. He did a fantastic job. I don't know if you saw the backpack fashion show sketch, but it was a delight. He also did a great bit about all the Chris's that look the same: Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, and Chris Pine. It was really, really good stuff. So hopefully he can maybe give Gal Gadot some pointers. But she's going to want to show that she can be more than just Wonder Woman, because she's perfectly cast. I mean, Gal Gadot is, very much Wonder Woman in her own life. So that's why I think the famous saying is 90% of directing is good casting. And Patty Jenkins, well, actually Zack Snyder is the one that cast her, really nailed that one. Kumail Nanjiani, of course, has been working for quite some time. He's on HBO. He has a lot of cameos and movies, but he does seem a little one note as well. So both of them are going to want to prove, again, range, depth of acting, and they can be seen in different settings. So that hopefully is the purpose of their hosting, and let's see if Saturday Night Live can do that for them. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second is that Gadot is in talks for finally another movie. And interestingly enough, it's not a Warner Brothers movie, but an MGM movie. You would think that Warner Brothers would want to keep her in-house. But she seems to be very busy over there. The Deadline article mentioned that she's not only in the upcoming Justice League movie and Wonder Woman 2, but did seem to confirm that she will be in that Flash spin-off whenever it comes out. But she's in talks to join an MGM movie, and it's not great, to be honest with you, but at least she's on the board. At least she's in negotiations to do something besides play Wonder Woman, which is very important if she wants to have a career. Although, just being Wonder Woman would be a lovely career, but, hopefully, everybody obviously would like to do a little bit more, right? I mean, Harrison Ford was able to do quite a bit, although to this day, he's still Indiana Jones and Han Solo, much to his annoyance. And Deckard, right? And Blade Runner. But I don't know how Blade Runner is going to do. The two clips that I've seen from that were pretty unwatchable. All right, so what's this movie over at MGM? Well, it's called Deeper. And it's actually Bradley Cooper's movie. So this is kind of sad that Gal Gadot is going to be the typical female character in this male-centric film. It's kind of everything that Wonder Woman stands against. But, hey, as I told you, Jet Nicholson said to Terry Garr, an actor acts, and she just has to work. So this is so cliche. A disgraced astronaut can't get work in space, so he goes to another unknown territory, the ocean. This is my pitch. And I'm sure, this is a Max Landis script, and I think Max Landis has never let me down with his script. Sometimes they're not perfect, but I think he's always interesting, at least in his ideas. So I do have faith in that. And David Goyer also worked on this, and he's a pretty good idea man. So their involvement makes me feel better about something, again, that I think seems pretty generic. So anyway, this disgraced astronaut says he'll go and explore a newly discovered oceanic trench, but he finds himself fighting mysterious forces. It sounds a lot like James Cameron's The Abyss, maybe meets Disney's Atlantis. So, of course, you're like, well, who's Gal Gadot going to be? Because she's not the astronaut. That's unfortunate. That would be great. So she's either in the control room, typical female situation, or she's Bradley Cooper's, lady friend being like, oh, please don't go on the mission. Why do you have to keep doing this? Can't you just stay at home? Barf. Typical stuff. Or she'll be part of the mystical forces, which would just make her aquatic Wonder Woman, a.k.a. Mira. But again, she just needs to land another role. She just needs to have something besides Wonder Woman. So I hope she gets it, and I hope Max Landis keeps it interesting. And by the way, speaking of comic books in DC, Max Landis' American Alien Superman limited series was very, very good. You should check that out. All right, so those are the Gal Gadot stories of the day. Now let's move to a very interesting story, and it's very interesting in that it's a very serious issue, but also I think it's complicated. It's a complicated issue. Now you might have seen the headlines over the past day or so that KJ Apa, who plays Archie Andrews on CW's breakout hit Riverdale, was involved in a car crash that thankfully he was able to walk away from, but he was supposed to give Dylan Sprouse, aka Jughead, a ride home from set that night, and Dylan Sprouse, something came up and he couldn't go with KJ Apa, and it's a good thing he didn't because the passenger side of KJ Apa's car was totally destroyed. But anyway, KJ Apa was driving home very late at night, back to his hotel, a 45-minute commute from set after a very long day of shooting, 14 hours, it was past midnight, and he fell asleep at the wheel. So this became a big thing about safety on set, and SAG-AFTRA, the union, is sending a team to the Riverdale set, and this is not great for Warner Brothers because, of course, not only is the scandal itself pretty bad, but there's been unfortunately a couple of incidences now of deaths on set with the stunt community. But of course, Warner Brothers is the production company behind that Bachelor in Paradise scandal that just went down. So Warner Brothers TV has got to get it together. But they claim, look, while we do not provide drivers, we don't, Warner Brothers and apparently a lot of television shows do not provide transportation for their cast to and from set, which I guess makes sense because the crew doesn't get transportation to and from set. Although it's interesting on movies, you have to give transportation to and from set. It's a union thing. The Teamsters do it. So it's interesting to see how there are different practices in different parts of the industry. But Warner Brothers said, hey, look, we have said to all of our talent that if they feel too tired, that we will provide them either a taxi or a hotel room at our own expense. They do not have to pay for it. But so I don't know if KJ Apa just felt that he could make it home, or maybe there's some kind of pressure on set, unspoken, not to raise the price. Who knows? And Warner Brothers also pointed out that he was coming off of 2 very short work days where he did very little work on set. So I guess their argument is he should have taken a lot of naps before his long day. Everybody's talking about how dangerous it is to work cast and crew so late. And I think it is dangerous to have somebody work well past midnight and then have such a long commute. It's dangerous. And there have been incidences, particularly with crew members, getting into accidents coming home from late shoots, some of them where they did not walk away. But it always, there's a brouhaha about it. Everyone says they feel really bad. We should do something, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody does anything. Everything goes back to normal and everyone forgets about it. Normal. But in the commentary on this situation, where everyone was like, this is so horrible, I saw a number of comments from people, readers of the trades. And, it's interesting to see people who aren't in the industry start to move over to the trades. Sometimes I think it's politically motivated, though. I don't know if they're professional trolls or whatnot. But they did have a good comment this time, troll or not. And they said, well, hey, how about the people who have to work 2 jobs and they're stuck driving home after a ridiculously long day, but they're doing it so they can make their payments. They're not glamorous Hollywood talent. Who's going to protect them? And I was like, that's a really good point. And I think that Hollywood has to be careful not to seem tone deaf when they're like, oh, nobody drove me home from my movie shoot. Boo-hoo, right? I mean, what about anybody who's in danger? And I would like to take a moment to tell you, if you feel you're too tired to drive home, pull over and sleep in your car. That can be dangerous. Make sure you do it in a safe place or as safe as possible. And yeah, the police might be like, you can't sleep in your car, but you should be like, well, if I don't, I'm going to get into an accident and hurt myself and potentially someone else. And then the police will be like, let's work this out, hopefully. It's a difficult situation. It's difficult for everyone, and it's unfortunate that so many people find themselves in this position, in life. And I think it's a very tricky situation. However, I would also like to caution people that Hollywood might seem glamorous, but for a lot of people it is not glamorous, and it is not a high-paying gig. And sometimes you might have a high-paying gig for a while, but who knows how, KJ Apa could never work again after Riverdale. He doesn't know. Also, he wants to make sure he's successful. He's jockeying for who's the most popular character on the show. It's a stressful situation working in Hollywood. There's a lot of desperation. There's a lot of competitiveness. It's very cutthroat. And again, you don't know how long you're going to work and if you'll ever work again. One of my favorite Kevin Kline quotes is he says he was staring off into space, deep in thought, and a relative, I forget who, came up to him and said, "What you thinking about?" And he said, "I'm just wondering if I'll ever work again." And that's the reality of working in Hollywood. So I think Hollywood should be sensitive to what everybody else is going through outside of the industry. But I think people outside of the industry should realize that Hollywood isn't quite as glamorous as, the media and Hollywood itself likes to lead you to believe. And because there's so much at stake, people are often pushed to do things that are very bad choices. All right, so speaking of Hollywood being irresponsible, let's go to the viewer question from Mike Brown. And yesterday I was talking about with the Isle of Dogs trailer from Wes Anderson and stop motion, hopefully winning another Best Animated Feature Oscar after their only win so far to date, 2005's Wallace and Gromit. I said, as we all know, people don't even, people vote in the Best Animated Feature category for the Oscars, but they've admitted that they don't watch all the movies, and often, they just vote for the one they've heard of, or the kids in their life can't stop watching, or they just vote Pixar, right? Or Disney, whatever the biggest name is. And so Mike Brown had a follow-up question. So Mike said, serious industry question. If Academy and Emmy voters openly admit to not having seen all the projects in a given category prior to casting their vote, why aren't they disqualified from voting? It just seems like an unfair process. Very good point, but here's the first thing. Nobody openly admits it, with their name attached. We know this from the blind ballots that they've started to run in the trades. They're a juicy item. Maybe people are exaggerating. I don't think they are. But they're admitted in blind ballots. And so nobody knows except for the reporter. And I guess that's protected, right? I'll never give up my source. So the identity is protected. So that's how we know that people aren't watching. Also, you can just see from who they pick, there doesn't seem to be any real sense of upholding the artistry of animation, whereas that's a top priority in other fields for some reason. Now, here's the thing. It's unfortunate that people don't watch everything, but it's like saying you can't vote if you don't read up on all the candidates and know all the issues in a political voting process, right? I mean, that would be the ideal situation, but there's just really nothing you can do about it. And there's so many movies competing that a lot of times people don't have enough time in the day. Now, once you get down to the finalists, I do think very strongly that you should have to go to an actual screening room and be checked off of having gone to make sure that you saw all of the films. I think that's what the Academy should do. It's easy to do, and they can, or even just a streaming link, and at the very least, make sure it played out so you can tell. And even if the person had it on the background and went and left the room for a little bit, I mean, at least the Academy did something. Right now, I do feel that the voters are very, very irresponsible. And that would be a way, you can't make somebody look up the candidates, right? Although I do wish that maybe the media would do a better job outlining political candidates and what they stand for, etc. That would be nice. But, we don't live in a perfect world. But here the Academy, I think, could demand, through a streaming or a live attendance, that you saw the movies. Again, not for the qualifiers, not when you're whittling it down, there's just too many movies, but when you get to the final stretch, when you have just 5 movies in a category, and a lot of times it's repeats, right? So you have to probably watch, 30 movies. I think they could insist that you do it. That's a lot, though. That's a lot. And that's just the reality of the business. So that's why campaigns are so important, both in the political arena and in the Hollywood arena, right? And of course, the political arena, the stakes are a lot higher. All right, so great question, Mike. But again, that's just the unfortunate reality of voting. All right, so I guess they try and make sure that they vet who's qualified to vote, and so that's why they're trying to change the makeup of the demographic of voters in the Academy to at least affect it. So to some degree that way. And maybe as they get people who don't take it for granted, you have a lot of older voters in the Academy who've been doing this for decades, and it's kind of like their only connection to Hollywood. Maybe that new group of people will take it a little bit more seriously instead of feeling like it's owed to them, like a feeling of, like there's a little bit of, I think, of that in the current Academy votership. But anyway, that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, Mike's viewer question. I'm particularly curious to what you would do about the Riverdale situation with the driving to and from set, and then also how you feel about industry voting. And then, of course, don't forget to join me this Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then again at 6 p.m. for the Q&A. And if you can't, those videos will go up afterwards on Beyond the Trailer for you to watch at your leisure. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.